Today on a special 10 News conference with Gene Valicenti inside the Rhode Island State Archives.
So a little later on, we're going to take a look at our treasures, or what I would call our treasures: the Declaration of Independence, the Act of Renunciation, those documents that are really unique to Rhode Island. We'd have a space for those, which we don't now. The public can't access them other than the charter at the State House. And then we'd have this roving exhibit space.
Holding the powerful accountable from Washington, D.C. to right here in southern New England. This is 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti.
This week, let's tour the state archives with a disappointed Secretary of State Gregg Amore, whose bid to build a new museum-like structure to house the state's treasures was just turned down by House Speaker Joe Shekarchi, who judged the $100 million price tag a bit too much this time around. There's a $500,000 for improvements, but that's it for now. Amore trying to make the case that a nondescript office building just up from PPAC in downtown Providence just isn't right for the state's stash of artifacts, documents, and maps worth tens of millions of dollars. Right now, this is where we're at. It's a nondescript building in downtown Providence. No sign, no grand titles, one Wybosset Hill. Let's go inside, meet the Secretary of State, let him make his case.
This is the research room and exhibit space. And you can see that it's not it's not huge, but you can see a public exhibit space down there. That changes over time.
You've been here since 2020.
2020.
Okay.
Prior to that, the archives was located at a location on Westminster Street, and prior to that, it was the Rhode Island State House, the old State House in Newport, the old State House on Bedford Street, and other public locations.
So you're having me here today because you want to make the case that all of this deserves a more fitting setting.
It does.
Not just a nondescript office building.
It does. We know, and you know, because you're involved in the process, when the Independent Man was displayed in the rotunda of the State House or in the lobby of the State House, thousands of people came to see that. And then when we brought him back just recently on May 4th, thousands more came in those days following that, and we displayed the Act of Renunciation that day, May 4th, Rhode Island Independence Day, and hundreds of people went to the Charter Museum to see that document. Now it only had space for the charter in that document, and that's why we need a much bigger space.
So you're saying if you give them a place that's fitting, they'll come?
We know they will, because they do in the federal archives, and they do all over the country. So this has a theme, right? And the theme is that your voice matters in a democracy, and petitions matter, and public petitions are part of our history, and they're preserved here at the archives. And so you can see Civil War era documents here and photographs of folks who served and petitions to the General Assembly in regard to various things. But I would say all of these documents are equally valuable depending on what your interests are.
Okay. If you get the money, you want to build a palace, so to speak, right?
We want to do what all of the other states
what do you want? You want something that's going to look at museums, something inviting, a real thing. So these would be in different cases, not just nondescript. You'd give them kind of a fitting place.
They would be, and we'd have exhibit space that would change over, but we'd have permanent treasure space.
Okay, well, I could see the point you're making. You want a dedicated place befitting of this, a real museum quality place.
Correct.
You want a place to house the stuff that the public is going to come, field trips.
Correct.
Kids.
Correct.
A must-see on the stop.
There are 10,000 students that visit the State House every year. There are 17,000 people in total that visit the State House every year. They should have a space to go and visit these documents, these artifacts that tell Rhode Island's story.
Okay, what would be the bill for this?
So the proposal that's before the General Assembly now is $101 million, but $70 million public dollars. The rest would be raised through federal funds and philanthropic donations.
70-30 split?
Yes.
Okay, what are we paying now for rent here? By the way, Joe Paolino owns the building. What are we paying?
So approximately $300,000, all said and done. That's before utilities, and that's before the cost of off-site storage. We have 4,000 boxes off-site that cost thousands of dollars per year, plus the cost to bring those documents back when they are requested.
So it's not going to be a savings right away.
No, but it's a public building, and as you could see and have seen, this is almost full. I mean, we're going to get to the point where we're either going to have to lease bigger space or build the state archives.
I have to say, it's not a dump.
No, not at all.
It's a nice space.
Not at all.
You're just saying it's not befitting of the documents we have. You need a special place for them. Well, there's an archive in Washington.
There is.
Right? We have a special building, and you go and you see the Declaration.
We do. There's an archive in every state that is state-owned and purpose-built. We are the only state without a state-owned and purpose-built archive.
Okay, you're going to show me the vault?
I am.
Coming up, inside the vault, where the treasures are kept. Thank you for turning to 10, your news leader. 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti continues right now.
This is a more secure area, the vault.
It's the vault, and you can feel the temperature difference.
Yeah, immediately. All of this is what? Stuff from Rhode Island's history, everything.
These are records, right? State records. And some records are obviously more valuable than others.
Yeah.
But beyond records, there are artifacts, there are photographs, there's film, there's old voting devices. There are the treasures, which I've talked to you about before, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights.
That's
all located here. Yes.
All of that. The stuff that's not in the State House, the special case. What's in the case at the State House?
So the State House case has the charter, the Royal Charter, 1663. It has some artifacts from Roger Williams, but that's it. That's it.
Okay.
That's all that's displayed here. All the rest is here.
Now, you wanted to tell me, when we were outside, the fire suppression system is water.
It's water.
That's not good for archives.
That is not. So you want to make sure that when you build an archives, when you have an archive space, that it's obviously above sea level. You want to make sure that there's not a water fire suppression system that may impact the documents if there is an incident.
Okay.
You want to make sure the temperature is just so. And basically, all documents require different storage. Okay. And about 15% of our documents are not stored according to industry standard.
All right. And now in this room, you do have a foam suppression or a chemical?
Yeah, chemical suppression.
So that's good here.
Correct.
All right, show me.
You can see the old voting machines are here. And as the Secretary of State, obviously that's a big part of our role, is administering elections. And you see over the course of the years how the voting machines have changed.
This looks like the first electronic one.
Yeah, it's. This
is in the archives already?
It's in the archives already.
I remember these came out.
Yeah.
It was Jim Langevin.
But you recognize the old the door system and the lever system, and that was the first iteration of that.
So you want to keep these. Okay.
So there are archival and objects that kind of tell the story of Rhode Island's history throughout the archives here.
Well, you know what? Just randomly, let's just stop. Let me see what's in these boxes. Can I touch them or
yeah,
use gloves?
Yeah. No.
All right. So this says General Treasurer Magaziner attended events April 2016 to June 27th. That doesn't mean he physically went. These are.
It probably does mean.
It does mean that he went to a box of events. Huh?
Yeah.
Magaziner was busy.
Yeah. So those are events that he was present for. Probably the programs from those events. Perhaps his words that were prepared for him, or he prepared for the event. The run of show. I'm sure in these boxes under Treasurer Magaziner, there are Gene Valicenti interviews.
10 News Conference.
Sure.
We'll put one over here. Correct. Let's keep going.
If you were to reach out to the archives and ask to see the Declaration of Independence, and we have 3 copies of that.
Okay.
One from the 1820s is a reproduction, but 2 that are 1776, right? Yep. So in real time. You would make an appointment with our archivist. They would bring those documents out into a side room in the front, and then you'd spend some time with those documents, but not a long period of time. So this is a reproduction. We have just produced a traveling case for this. In fact, we brought this out at the RI 250 inaugural event. The other 2 that we have, one is signed only by John Hancock. So that's the one that was sent to all of the states, the colonies. The other is a broadside. So broadsides were not intended to last for 200 plus years, but we have one that did. And they were basically advertisements of the Declaration of Independence. And that was printed in Newport and at the request of the Federal Government General Assembly.
Okay, so just so I understand, there is one original Declaration of Independence.
Correct.
The one they signed in Philadelphia, everybody's signature. After that, they made copies?
Well, even before that.
They made copies.
Before it was signed by the delegates, there were copies sent to the states. We have one of those copies with only John Hancock, the president of the Congress, signature.
And this particular copy was given to the states?
Correct.
What is this worth? What's the value on that? I mean, it's priceless, but I imagine somebody would pay a lot of money for that. I think some of them have actually gone up for auction, haven't they?
They have.
Yeah.
Several million dollars.
Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So that we're looking at on this table is worth millions of dollars. So you want it to be shown.
Rhode Islanders and people visiting Rhode Island should have an opportunity to see this.
Okay.
This is living history. So this is what I would consider the original for the states.
Okay.
Want my arm here?
And you can see it's not signed by the delegates, but it is signed by Hancock.
This is another copy. It's a little different.
Yeah.
In format.
It is.
So when the Declaration was signed, each state got several copies, ours actually was signed by John Hancock.
It was. The 13 that were sent to the States were signed by Hancock to show that this was the copy that was coming from Philadelphia.
Okay, so this is worth millions.
This
too,
is
I would
worth millions.
suspect. So millions.
And as a
here,
history
millions
teacher, every
there.
time I see this, Gene, I get tingles because this is so significant. Rhode Islanders should be able to see this.
Okay.
And others should be able to see this. If you're coming from out west, California, and you're visiting Rhode Island in the summer, and it's a rainy day in Narragansett or Newport, you should be able to come see the Hancock Declaration.
Let me ask you this. There's nothing stopping you now from building a beautiful case and putting this at the State House if you feel that strongly about it.
There is, because the only appropriate place for that is in the Charter Museum, and there's not really room for that.
Okay.
And then it would require what is about a $500,000 storage component where the charter rests.
Yep.
We'd have to have that for this as well. So there's not really a space for it.
Now, this has to be, I assume, humidity control.
Correct.
What do we have that here? Is this fine? Is this where it should be in this case, in this cabinet?
So this is a specialty enclosure that was built for it. So
Okay.
this has UV filtering and protection on it. Everything
Okay.
that's encasing it is acid-free. And then this box itself was also custom built.
Mm-hmm.
This is also an acid-free, aluminum-coated,
Okay.
powdered. But the room itself is also temperature and climate controlled, separate from the rest of this building.
Yep.
But it's one of those situations where we can always do better.
Okay, so if the legislature gives you the money to build what you would like to have, a special building, you would have custom-made cases. This could be in a wall.
That's correct.
Ensconced in the wall. It could be something.
You've been to the National Archives,
Yes.
right? Those are permanent display
Yeah.
exhibits.
It's like an altar.
It's
in
like an
front of
altar.
it. Yeah.
That's what. And if you travel around the country to other archives, especially Massachusetts, you will and Pennsylvania, you will see these documents displayed in what they refer to as treasures rooms, which we do not have the space for.
Now, it sounds like a very nice idea.
It's a great idea. Yeah,
It's a lot of money.
it is.
We have other things to spend money on. You know, everybody's
Always.
complaining about the bus, the bus
Always.
station, the homeless, the affordable housing. Of
course.
How are you going to make this case?
Yeah,
it's very nice. It's very nice.
No,
but
I spent 8 years on the House Finance Committee, so I know what the competing interests are for dollars. But at some point, we're going to have to do this, and it's not going to get cheaper. We have to preserve. I'm very concerned about the preservation. The governor is kind of focused on the tourism aspect of this, which makes sense. We have a real opportunity here in historical tourism, and we already have a great arts and culture economy. But we have an obligation to preserve these documents in a proper way. And as you can see, there isn't too much empty space here. And as Ashley said, you can always do better in preserving what are the treasures.
no, I would say we could do better than this.
Yeah.
So this was the earliest broadside that we had here in Rhode Island. It's printed by Solomon Southwick.
So, Declaration of Independence. This copy would have been nailed to a tree
Or something like
or
that.
something for
Yeah.
people to see.
Or read in the town square. The broadside was basically sent to the colonies to have read in town squares and then posted in town squares. So all of the cities and towns in Rhode Island got a copy of the broadside. Some of them are long gone. We have the one that was sent to the state. A few years back, I think they found the one in Portsmouth taped behind a filing cabinet.
Okay. These are the ones that turn up behind picture frames at flea markets and stuff like that.
Right. And they were printed in Newport.
This was printed in Newport.
Yep.
And in 1776?
Yeah.
Same year?
Same year.
Later
Same
that
year.
summer?
Yeah, this was getting the message out. This is your job today.
Well, we're going to go back to this maybe. I may be a town crier with a bell.
Maybe.
Now, was this signed or is that a facsimile signature? It says Henry.
Henry Ward Secretary, so that was a signature from the General Assembly.
General Assembly, yeah.
Okay.
So that would indicate that it was the one coming from the state to the cities and towns.
And this sits in here in this cabinet.
Correct.
Yeah, but this is protected.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're protecting these things. We're just not offering them. If you were to go to the Massachusetts Archives today, you would enter a history museum that tells the story of Massachusetts, and then behind that you'd have a treasure room that has all of these documents. Of course, they don't have a Portsmouth Compact like we do. They don't have the Gaspee documents like we do. So our copy of the Bill of Rights is here, and you can see Congress, right, of the United States in the wording, the Old English wording. And this is really unique, right? So the vast majority of American states do not have a copy of the original Bill of Rights. We do because we are an original 13 colony and state. And really, this is the foundation of why Rhode Island joined the Union. Without a promise of the Bill of Rights, Rhode Island was not going to sign on to the Constitution.
So this is its home? It's a very nice case. It's a correct case.
This is its home.
Okay, it's a protective case.
Yes.
But it is a little undignified. It's just kind of stacked here. I thought it was a copy machine.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just a.
So imagine landing at TF Green International, and as you're gathering your baggage, you see a big advertisement to come see the Bill of Rights in Providence. I would suggest that people will do that because this is American history.
Okay.
Freedom of religion, freedom of speech. I mean, the right to bear arms.
Yeah.
It's here, and this is so important to the story of our state and our nation. So the map of the Battle of Rhode Island.
Oh, okay.
This is located right near Portsmouth High School, Fort Butts Hill, and they've done a really good job of kind of clearing out the battlefield and allowing people to drive up there and take a look at what it may have looked like. But the significance of the Battle of Rhode Island, it is the place where the first integrated regiment fought. So the 1st Rhode Island Regiment was Native Americans, Black Americans, white Americans who were fighting on behalf of the colonies against Great Britain. And the Battle of Rhode Island is significant in another way in that the French supported the American effort at the Battle of Rhode Island. It's the first French intervention in the American Revolution.
You'd like this to be displayed?
Sure, absolutely. There's a Museum of the American Revolution in Philadelphia. And the National Park Service has offered us the portrait of the 1st Rhode Island Regiment. We just don't have an appropriate place to store that portrait so that it can be seen in public.
Speaking of portraits, we have some worth a lot of money.
We do.
Gilbert Stuart. Is that under your control?
It is.
Even though it's in the state
It
room?
is, and it is not being preserved correctly. So you can start to see cracks in the Gilbert Stuart.
The Gilbert Stuart is not being cared for correctly?
You've been in that stateroom a number of times. The humidity in there is incredible.
Yes. A lot of hot air in there. You're right.
There's a lot of hot air there. There's lighting issues there. I mean, that should be preserved in a space that is appropriately environmental for an old painting, a painting from the 1700s. We have 2 of them. The other one is at the old Colony House in Newport, upstairs, not accessible, but a little better because it's darker and a little cooler. But you can see the cracks in that painting. That should be in an archival situation.
So that painting that we all know, the famous paint, it's priceless. That really shouldn't be where it is.
It shouldn't.
That should be protected, and we could put a replica up.
And we have seen estimates on that painting of $30 million.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing.
Yeah. They're all really impressive portraits of founding Americans who had a great impact on the nation's beginnings.
All right, we're going to go look at some artifacts now. Okay, lead the way.
So we pulled some items out for your visit, and they include the moon rock. And you had mentioned that you'd seen the moon rock at the State House. This is a little bigger.
We have 2 moon rocks.
Correct, and the flag, the Rhode Island flag that was
taken up,
brought onto the surface of the moon.
Okay.
So the visitors to the State House really like the moon rock when they enter the State Library, especially the young people.
What is this?
So this is a machine for folding cloth. It's a patent model of a machine. It was submitted to the Patent Office July 3rd, 1866 by W.F. Haywood.
Okay.
And so we have a whole host of these patent artifacts in the archives. These are photographs of the Italian flag throwers who were here in 1976. Because you and I share Italian heritage,
that one's a copy.
We brought some Italian documents out here.
Oh, this is in Siena when they go on their parades, the Palio. I've seen that.
Yeah, they did a demonstration on the State House steps. It was 1967.
Oh, here you go. Here he is.
There he is.
This is before he was moved. Before he moved to Johnston.
I know you never talk about him.
Right. So. He hasn't aged a bit.
And so you see some documents here that are in relation to Italian-American organizations that developed. So
he's actually pointing at Johnston, I think, the island. I'll be there someday.
There's where I want to go. Yeah. This is my favorite document in the archives, and it really goes to, our history. So this dates back to the 1640s, and you can see they drew the state symbol into the record of the General Assembly, and there it is.
Oh, okay.
And that has remained the state symbol to this day.
Is that the first known representation of it?
Yeah, it is.
So this is the idea.
It is. And that's just enlarged for you to see.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's neat.
Okay.
And then the Lincoln letter is here, I believe.
And
so that is his signature.
What is he writing about? Authenticated copy of a joint declaration to amend the Constitution. An amendment.
Yeah, so it would be the 13th Amendment, I would imagine, the first process. You can tell it's Abraham Lincoln.
I was just going to ask you, real signature or secretary?
Yes, because the secretary only wrote A. Lincoln. When Lincoln signed for himself, he wrote Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, okay.
So it's pretty neat. We have 64 letters from George Washington as well.
That should be on display.
It should be on display.
It should be on display.
It should be on display.
Is that an original blueprint?
Yeah, and you can see clearly that's a woman.
Oh yeah. Now the state house is what, 120 years old or something?
Yeah,
Am I
we have a
correct?
display in the lower level gallery right now talking about the history of the Rhode Island State House.
So these are the original blueprints.
Right.
You see the elevation.
McKim, Mead, and White.
Famous Newport, New York architects.
Correct.
And the elevation, and then when you get to the top, this is the independent woman.
That's the independent woman. There is no spear. The anchor is there, but there is no spear.
It was supposed to be a woman.
It was supposed to be a woman.
What happened?
And her name was Hope.
What happened?
We don't know. We've tried to look into that a bit, but in the final iteration, it was the independent man that we all know.
Okay.
I guess he looked more fierce. But it would not have been out of the norm, right? Atop the Capitol is Lady Columbia.
Yes.
So it would not have been out of the norm.
That's interesting. That's a little known story. I don't think many people knew that the original was supposed to be a woman.
We talk about it a bit in the display at the lower level, and we talk about it to the kids that come in now to see the independent man, to tell them the full story.
This is a beautiful drawing.
It is. So these are neat stories that tell our story.
Up next, a final pitch for a new building.
I think the idea has been well received, and I think anybody that does this, what you did today, understands the need for this. To your point, we have competing interests. There are only so many dollars. You have the bridge situation. We don't know what that's going to cost the state. But this has to happen at some point. This is pay me now or pay me later. We're either going to have to move out of this space to a larger space that we lease, which is going to be difficult because then you have to refit the vault, or we're going to do like all of the other states and build a purpose-built state archives and history museum.
And half of what you have is in storage in a nondescript storage place, the Iron Mountain.
Not quite half, but 4,000 boxes and growing.
Okay. A lot of what you have is an Iron Mountain,
Correct.
which is a storage space.
And we have to retrieve that at a cost, and obviously it costs us to store the documents there.
Okay, so under oath, you didn't set anything up for us? You didn't make it look terribly uninviting? This is what it looks like every day?
This is what it is.
All right.
And so you could not display that portrait I talked about of the 1st Rhode Island Regiment here for the public. It's just not an appropriate setting. Temperature control-wise, light-wise, and access-wise. There's not really parking here. There's not parking on the street. It's difficult.
If you get what you want, when would doors open? How much lead time?
Yeah, I think we're probably talking about 2027. If everything were to start at the conclusion of this legislative session.
Do you have a vision? Do you have a sketch? Do you know what you would like? Canadian architecture, contemporary? You're going to match the administration building? You're going to match the State House? What are you thinking?
So we have an existing sketch that we don't necessarily think will be the final iteration, but we have a pretty good idea of what the building will look like. And we know that if we have to scale back, if there is not the appetite for a $60 million bond, let's say a $40 million bond, then we can scale back and make sure that we have a space that is bigger than this, 11,000 square feet, but can be expandable.
Okay, so right now it's a 70-30 split.
Correct.
Federal government, state government, private contributions.
Correct.
Could you tinker with that formula?
We could.
I mean, why don't you go 50-50? There's people who might spend for this.
We have had great conversations with philanthropists and others who want to make sure the state commits before they commit.
Okay. So it's possible.
It is possible. And like I said, it's going to happen at some point.
So that's the tour, and that's the Secretary making his case for a brand new building. Some thoughts. It's not bad. It's not a dump. It's fine. It's just not appropriate for what we have and to display it in a fashion more suitable to the dignity of the documents. So that's the tour with Amore's bid for a new building put to bed, probably till next year when we expect him to try again.